Welcome to episode 10, Should You Pivot? And How to Create Strategic, Verbal, and Visual Brand Clarity.
Welcome to the PR Playbook podcast with Ranjini Joshua, the only podcast that teaches you how to strategically navigate the world of public relations and social media and grow a powerful brand.
Hi, and welcome to episode 10. There are a number of businesses that are now revising their business strategy to determine how they are going to approach our new normal and keep their businesses on the road to success for 2020, which almost seems impossible. For some, it's a loss. For others, it's the same track. And for some others, it's incorporating some new ideas or even pivoting their brand messaging to meet the needs of the current climate in the market. To address this topic today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Fabian Geyrhalter, author of Bigger Than This and How to Launch a Brand, and the principal of Finian, a Los Angeles-based consultancy that creates brand clarity for startups of any size and age. Hi, Fabian. It's been a while, but thank you so much for joining me today on the PR Playbook podcast. All right. First things first, how are you feeling during this crazy time we're going through?
I'm feeling crazy. It's it's a nutty time, and it's difficult when recording these podcasts because, they air at a certain time and things change so quickly, right? So, we record this on March 23rd and things are getting really, really, really crazy out there. So yeah, I'm hanging in there like everyone else. I'm trying to stay positive, which is very difficult, but we all have to power through this, and we can all just try to lift each other up and to help each other. And that's really what we need to do now.
Yeah, I'm hoping these short form podcasts will help people as they're trying to navigate too. So we'll see how we can help them today.
Totally.
So what has been the biggest personal challenge or shift for you during, what's going on right now, this pandemic? And I guess not so much, in her personal life, but as far as a branding agency, what have you been seeing lots of trends follow?
It's so early on, but really what is happening right now is that brands turn their human side towards the customer. It's something that we've seen over the last couple of years with the rise of social media happening a whole lot, right? That brands are really only being loved if they act in a very personal way, because then they become personable, right? And then people start actually wanting them, interrupting their friend feed with a brand message, because the brand messages are meaningful,
right?
And now more than ever, right? You see these brands that really care, that do something, that roll up their sleeves and that ask themselves, hey, what is at the core of our brand? What is the North Star that's always been important to our brand, and how can we take that and now actually use that to help people? And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Even me myself with my brand consultancy. Lucky for me, I have a very small consultancy, and it took me a long time to get to being a small consultancy. But right now, I'm literally just switching off my services and moving into being more of a mentor and being more of a partner, to my people, because work is going to slow down for everyone, right? Yeah. That's for sure. And it's just, now is the time to be there for everyone who's less fortunate, and I think the brands that do that well, they're the ones that will be seen in a very different light once we actually make it past this.
Yeah, and I've actually seen a lot of messaging coming through on how can we help you, and obviously retail is taking advantage of this because they kind of have to stay alive, and so they offer discounts and they're offering content that's useful to everybody as they stay at home. I've seen a lot of, I'm a parent, so I've seen a lot of, hey, these are tips that you could do while you're at home and stuff like that. So I think everyone's kind of, they're jumping into band together a little bit as a community.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally. That's what you have to do. And I think, For most companies if they're in the US, I mean, the first thing that they need to really think about is how can you help your employees? How can you keep your employees, right? I think that's the first thing, is like really think within the company. How are we going to survive that? Not from a financial point of view, but very directly linked from our employee point of view, because you will need them once this whole thing is over, right? And that's really, really difficult, right? And then the next thing is exactly what you just mentioned, which is, how can your service or your product or your offering, whatever it is, how can you help people, right? Because it's not a time to sell right now. And I'm getting so pissed off when I see brands right now trying to sell me something. And it is such a fine line. It is really, really difficult, right? Because, you mentioned, good content, right? So I mean, I have great content, and some of it comes at a price. And I know that a lot of it will actually help people, but I have the hardest time right now selling to people, because it's a time to assist, right? Yeah. So I think for companies, they just have to go back to their mission. They have to go back to their values, and they really have to realign those values, and and just see how that connects with people outside of the product and outside of the offering.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like an investment that we have to make at this point in each other.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It's about trust and community, right? And brands should be trusted, and they should be about community. So in a way, it's a really good time for brands to actually have to walk their talk, right? Yeah,
I really like the kind of revisiting your mission and vision, and just kind of staying true to that during the time. That way, at the end of it all, you've always done what you told people you're going to do.
Totally.
So I agree. My dad actually, he told me, well, this is good. Everyone has to stay at home with their families. Maybe they should be doing that for a change.
It's really, it's really, really difficult during these times to see the light, right? But there are some of these moments like that, right? Where you suddenly like, well, you are with your family, and you start, I always think that businesses that are going to do really well after this are interior designers, because everyone's suddenly stuck at home and they're like, oh, we should really make our home so much nicer, in gardening and like all of that. And, and obviously all the footprints.
You heard it here first. A tip for anybody who wants to be an interior designer, get ready.
This is the time. This is the time.
Well, over the past couple of weeks, I've heard about several mobile and digital first companies reaping the benefits. And one of them is an online grocery delivery company. And they've been able to grow their business 100-fold because they were already digitally first. But also because of this pandemic where we can't interact socially, or we've been told to stay at home or limit social interaction. I think many CEOs and entrepreneurs, myself included, I've had a lot on their mind to try to figure out how to navigate and maximize these digital parts of our businesses, just like retailers that are focusing online. And some are kind of trying to figure out how to pivot. So my question here is, what is the first thing that you would tell any established brand that's kind of evaluating their next steps right now? And you kind of said that a little bit previously, just on, kind of staying true to your mission or vision. But is there anything else that you think would help these brands stand out when, the light's at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it goes back to a couple of those things I said. I agree with you, right? It's a lot about looking inwards, and it's a lot about treating your employees right, making sure you still have them, and then aligning your values with those of your customers, right? I think this is going to be a really good test. And to understand, well, if I actually don't know how to do that as a brand, well, maybe that's a problem. Maybe my offering maybe my heart is not where my offering is, right? Maybe it's not deep enough. And, back to your digital question, of course, I mean, at this point, I think every company has to go digital. And it's crazy, even from my local wine bar, that suddenly has to have a website to sell, wine, which before they sold it actually in the bar. Now they have to figure out how do we have happy hours on a Friday night with all of our, regulars. And I've been helping them a little bit just pro bono, telling them, look, here are all the things you need to do. And they're like deer in the headlights because they never had a Zoom meeting, they never did anything like that.
I think that's the big shock for a lot of these, just local retailers, right?
Right. And I think in a way, I mean, it really shows the ones that are innovative and the ones that can think about, okay, what do we have in front of us and what can we actually use, right? It's kind of inventory. What do we have that other people need and how can we get it to them? And I don't think that that's much different from a brewery that knows that they have wheat and they can actually bake bread for people and have it as a curbside pickup, to someone who creates an app, let's say a mindfulness app, and suddenly they can think about, okay, how can I now reutilize this mindfulness app to get people through this? And can I offer it for free for 2 months? Can I take that risk to afterwards have a huge loyal tribe, that loves us? So I think it's a lot of, everyone has something to offer. How can you flip this around, repackage it, distribute it digitally in a way that is very, very cost sensitive and very, very honest?
Those are great. Those are both great ideas, first of all. So I hope there's somebody who owns a brewery listening. That is awesome. But also, just based on what you just said too, there's a lot of freelancers that are looking for work, web dev work, mobile dev work, that probably, I think it's a really good opportunity for freelancers to get this kind of like piecemeal work where they can keep themselves, moving. And then they can also help these smaller retailers. I think is a really good opportunity for them to connect too, right? There's plenty of people.
That is really, really great that you picked up on that idea, right? Because I think that's exactly it, right? Very often freelancers are scared of taking on pro bono and nonprofit work because what if other work comes in? Well, there's likely no other work going to come in, right? Like right now, it is just, we're all going to have to get through this together. And if there is not a lot of great paying work coming in, then do something to help the community. And if you can build a quick website overnight for a local business that you want to see survive on the other end, right? And then do that, right? Be there for others. It comes back to that.
Yeah. And I think that, just kind of, this is a little bit of a side note, but that kind of also goes to personal branding, right? It's a personal branding. What is your mission and vision as like maybe a web developer, or maybe for me as a PR person, what do I want to see people have at the end of the day? Because it could be personal and it could be at the company level. And I think people have to consider themselves as a brand. And I've said this many times, but I think people still don't, not everybody as a mass can identified with that before. Now is the time to really identify with who are you as a brand, right?
Totally. And people will see you for how you behave during these times, right? It's the same with friends, right? Are they gonna, have you been there for me during my bad times, right? When I had trouble. Now everyone has trouble. All of your clients have trouble, right? I mean, there is the same thing that you as a service provider, that's what I would tell freelancers, right? The same thing that you experience, companies experience too. I mean, everyone is scared about their job. Everyone is scared about how is it going to impact my industry. And I think us as service providers, what we can do is we can just reach out to our clients and say, look, you know me for one thing. I might be the perfect tech PR person in your case, or in my case, I can create brand strategy, brand clarity, and I can help with that visual and verbal alignment. But I'm here for you in any other way too. Like if you need something from me that you think I can give you, that usually is not part of our, of our scope agreement, or our deliverables or our agreements. But if you feel like you're strapped thin and I can help you with something, please let me know. Right. Yeah. So I think it's more the idea that you're part of their family, you're part of their tribe. And by doing so, on the one hand, you really give back and you really try to help their business. On the other hand, of course, from a personal branding perspective, they care about that. They feel like, oh, wow, yes, you are there for us. And thank you for that email. And we'll think about you. Maybe you get some work along the way, but definitely at the end of the tunnel, they will reach out back to you because you were there for them and you were a great partner,
Yeah, that's very important to remember. And I think I like the way you're positioning. It's like as if it's a friend, right? If you're not there for your friends, they're not going to be there for you. And it's kind of that same story there.
And one more thing to add to that, just because I saw a friend of mine who's also a business partner, for certain aspects. He wrote this great email to a prospect client who they've been looking to get this project for the longest time, and they were one of the last 3 companies, and they were about to say, "Hey, this is it. You're going to get the project." He just reached out to them, and he wrote this awesome email, and he said, "Look, I know that during these times right now, the last thing on your mind is the website redo. Don't even worry about this project. If there's anything we can help in the interim, just let us know. But that idea of being proactive and not trying to get the last piece of work that you can get, and instead saying, hey, it makes total sense. I'm sure this project is not even, part of your day-to-day thinking right now, but no, we're here for you.
No, that's great. That's absolutely great. So, I mean, going back to the brand pivot, I think there's a lot of difficult messaging and tasks that go into this, especially during this period of time where I keep bringing myself talking about a pandemic, even though I try to avoid it, but it's impossible. If someone's saying, okay, look, I'm going to make a brand pivot, or I'm going to, maybe not a pivot, but like kind of some kind of adjustment so that I can reach a new audience. Are there any things that they should consider before doing that, or any best practices for doing that properly in a way that's, I don't know, suitable, or that makes, just it's nice, that makes sense?
I think the big question is it short-term thinking, right? Or is it the right destiny for the business long-term? Like how will you actually feel about that move, not 2 months from now, but 2 years from now, right? When life is back to fairly normal.
Yeah.
Does it make any long-term business sense? Because if not, just create a bridge solution, like all the restaurants we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not going into the bread business. No, they're just going to keep brewing beer. And they make bread as well, because they know that, no pun intended, they can make some bread and butter during the time, and they can support people with it. So it's the same thing. So I think doing something really drastic right now is kind of acting out of panic. I think that if your business is not able to succeed as a service provider, right? Let's say you're a couple of people service provider, small service provider. If you're not able to get through a couple of months, then you have a huge positioning problem, right?
Yeah.
Like then it has nothing to do with the pandemic right now. This is just showing you that your business has big problems overall, right? So I think that that's something for, if you're in that position where you're like, I don't know if I can make it, if I can make payroll for a month or two, then you know that you should actually fundamentally rethink your brand's positioning and rethink of who your audience is and what you actually give them, because you should always have enough money in the bank to go through a couple of months as any kind of company, right? So I think that's a good kind of like eye opener, that hey, if this pandemic makes you realize this, maybe, this is the time for you to hunker down and really rethink, what you're offering.
Right. No, that makes total sense. I think kind of on the heels of that. So what if I feel like this is a little bit scary, but I have come across a couple of companies that are launching new brands. Do you have any advice for them on kind of the branding and positioning, or if they should maybe wait even?
It's a really, really good question. One that is on my mind a lot, because that's my target audience, right? So we work with a lot of new companies. But I mean, to be realistic, it's really, if you have a great product market fit, right? And you have the investment secured, then launch, right? Because I'm working with a guy that is creating jeans for oversized guys, right? Like only for big guys, right? And there is nothing like that really out there. And there's no brand around that. Well, and if you have that, and if you already invested time and money into it, if you already started working on the brand, go through it, because you know what? Big guys will always need jeans that work for them, right? So if you have something that is really like that, but if you just have yet another app or yet another product with an extra feature, whatever, hunker down, wait it out, right? People are going to be frugal. And depending on how badly this government screws up and how badly people go against the stay-at-home order, this may go for a really, really long time. So in a way, I think that the brandscape itself is actually readjusting, and we will see many more necessary and useful brands emerge out of this, and a lot less, me too and nice to have kind of products. They will all dissipate. So I think it's time for you to look into the mirror and say, do I have a product that people would actually really need, regardless, of how things are? If you have that, go launch. And if not, then hunker down and really think about, okay, how can I best position this brand when the time is right? It is time for you to think about your messaging, which people like, will use once it comes down to actually making the brand launch and PR. And it is time for you to actually make your brand better and rethink your website and do these kind of things that you can do so that you have a really great launch when you're past that. Because once you are able to launch, you will have to gain traction so much quicker because you're just losing a couple of months.
Right, right. No, I mean, this is great advice. I think you're right about the market. It's going to weed out the wannabes and pull out the people who are really good. And
Totally.
we're going to see some, I think, really interesting and amazing things come out of this, aside from all the community stuff and all the digital collaboration that's happening. I think we're going to see a lot more international brands. And when I mean international, I mean more people who are collaborating internationally, less that they're coming from somewhere else. But I've just been hearing a lot of collaboration, and it's very, very, very interesting to be able to talk to people all over the world who are experiencing the same thing. The startup ecosystems that are experiencing the same things in different markets, and the businesses that are experiencing similar challenges. And it's really nice, I think, to be able to give people a common platform to rise to the top somehow, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Just to kind of wrap this up, I want to always leave a little bit of actionable tools for everybody. So do you think you could provide maybe like 3 to 5 essential branding best practices for anyone that is either revisiting their branding, doing that exercise, or establishing their branding in this quiet period, let's say?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think we touched on a couple of these things, but really it's defining why you are in business. What is the reason for the existence of the company or your service that is bigger than just its offering, right? So it's really define the North Star, the guiding light, whatever you call that. What is that, right? And then not only define it, but what has to happen right now is live up to that, right? And share it, and then create values that everyone, first of all, within the company will share, and then that your audience will also want to become a part of, right? And I think one of the big things that I see in branding happen so often in such a great way is that when people go for niche audiences, right? Because in a place like the US, a niche audience can still be hundreds of thousands of people, right? So if you define what your focus is, if you have that focused message and a focused audience, which means a very small audience that just loves you because you're 100% just there for them, you will be heard, and you will be able to create a tribe around them. And then, of course, in the end, you build your brand upon that, right? Upon something that is bigger than your product. And it's also actually the best way to be recession-proof, right? Because you have a small audience that really loves you. You have a very catered offering that only speaks to them. And then people will like you because you speak their talk, right? And I think that's it. From then on, it's just step and repeat messaging, right? I mean, once you have that core message in your core tribe, it's about talking the same brand language across all your channels in a consistent and equally attractive manner, which is so easy to say and so hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of notes for myself, so that's good. So thank you for that. I think this is going to be awesome and very helpful to many people who are just, I think it's, sometimes things like this just shake it up, and your brain kind of, even if you have that direct messaging, your brain just kind of gets a little confused for a moment. So I think this is a good place where hopefully people can realign themselves with their brand messaging and kind of get back on track too at the same time.
I totally agree. This is a time to look inside, right? Which we already all do right now. And now doing the same for your brand makes a lot of sense.
Great. Well, last but not least, you have so much great content on your website. You're doing so many awesome things. I have one of your first books, which I love because it's a workbook style. So I love that, How to Build Your Brand. I'd love for you to do like a Finian plug. So if you could just give us some ideas on kind of the things that we should look at on your website, and maybe just shout out your website URL and any other things projects that you're working on right now where we can kind of take a look and download anything, any materials. That would be awesome.
Cool. Really appreciate it. Well, first off, Finien.com. That's FINIEN.com. That's kind of the hub of everything. If you enjoy this podcast, I have a feeling you might enjoy my podcast too, which is I chat with founders and investors about the intersection of brand clarity and startup success. And you can find that when you search for Hitting the Mark. It's also at hittingthemarkpodcast.com. The two books that you already mentioned, How to Launch a Brand.com and biggerthanthis.com. And last but not least, and I think this could be a really good useful tool for your listeners, is my online brand strategy course, where you can really hunker down and really define your brand. And that is resonate.com. That's resonate, but with AID at the end, as in I am aiding you to resonate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for joining me and helping me put out some good content for everybody here. As usual, if you have any questions, please send us comments, questions, or suggestions to podcast@thesilvertelegram.com. You'll find additional information on Fabian and Finien and all his sites on the show website with the show notes. So you'll see all the links there. That's all for now. Stay safe, healthy, and creative. See you next week.